All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back to the channel. I'm really excited to have, now I know this person off of social media. We have met in person, so I do feel it's not just like somebody I bring on as a guest. I've known Ashley and Sarah both. We met in person at Coachella. We've been friends for a while, but I just wanted to bring Ashley here today and talk a little bit about why they left carnivore, good, bad, ugly, and just start a dialogue. Before I turned the camera on, Ashley and I were talking about how I think it's so dangerous that when we create this like echo chamber, and that's part of what I want to do with my YouTube channel and Instagram is like, I don't want it to be an echo chamber. I want to show you guys stuff that works and that doesn't work. So that's enough talking for me. Go ahead and introduce yourself for people who don't already know you.
All right, hey guys, I am one of the Strong Sistas, so I'm Ashley, and Sarah was going to come on today, but we are in this like weird transition period in our life where we're trying to sell the current house and move out, finish a cookbook, defend my PhD all in the next like 30 days. And so there's just like a lot going on. So my mom came down today to surprise us. And so my sister's helping my mom out, move some boxes, and they're actually bringing boxes up north. So there's a lot going on. So Sarah will be on in the next one. But yeah, so we really appreciate our friendship with you, Sarah. I think that it's great that we can talk about these things in a non-dogmatic manner and just be able to just recognize that there is no one single way fits all. Like even as you've been showing in the carnivore, like there's no one single carnivore fits all. Like the Sean Baker approach of just steak and maybe eggs every once in a while, like there's no way that that's going to work for everyone. You are demonstrating that like, hey, a high fat approach is another way. And then I think our channel, we're trying to show like, you don't have to be super restrictive either if that's something that's not worked for you. We're all like, but the common ground is like, we're animal, like everyone promotes being animal based and getting our nutrients in from animals. Like us adding carbs back in, we aren't denying that the most nutrient dense foods that we're eating are meat, organs. Like there's no, like in this modern era where the food production system is just so messed up, we aren't going to be able to get much nutrients out of our produce. The soil is depleted with nutrients. And so I think rather than like criticizing how other people are eating, let's find our common ground, because we have a much bigger battle to fight out there versus like with the Impossible Burger and the plant-based movement. And like, if we stay divided in these like dogmatic communities, that's going to bring us nowhere. And for example, the dietary food guidelines will just never be updated. They'll just always remain plant-based and heavy grain and vegetable oil. Whereas if we can all stay together in this idea of being animal-based and getting our nutrients in from animal products, like that's how we are going to progress forward. And so that's why we really appreciate your friendship, because we can still talk to you, even though we've added carbs back to our plate. I know that just sounds like ridiculous, but like that's been an interesting experience with, I think in general, like our community, we have been like, has been very supportive, and we are very blessed for our Strong Sistas support team. But there have definitely been like some random YouTube trolls who are behind a like pictureless account and just will comment some things on our channel about how like carnivore failures, the epic carnivore failures, they can do that. That comment will just get deleted. It's fine. But that's why we just really appreciate this open communication.
Yeah. And it's crazy how we were kind of on the same path back in December. And then you guys decide, it's funny. There's some parallels with us, because I had done carnivore the kind of standard way for about a year, and my cycle had never regulated. And I think some of that was too much fasting. But then even after I quit the fasting, it still hadn't regulated. You guys were kind of on the same place of like, your cycle never regulated. It never came when you did carnivore. And so we both at right about the same time changed our approach. And I decided, to follow, someone who was like Stephanie Keto Person, who's helped me to do high fat. And that's been magic for me. I've got my cycle back and I'm ovulating every month, and it's awesome. And you guys decided to go the route of, adding the carbs back in, but still keeping those nutrients. But when that happened, it kind of opened my eyes to the crazy dogmatic zealot behavior in the community, because I saw a shift, and I remember like texting back and forth with you guys and chatting with you guys. You went through a lot of, it wasn't as bad as like I'm no longer vegan type of stuff, but it was pretty nasty, some of the stuff you guys had to go through just from choosing a different approach, you know?
I should have given a little bit of a timeline for some of your listeners who aren't aware. So I think Sarah and I are about maybe 3 or 4 months behind you, right? So we probably started carnivore maybe 4 to 5 months behind you.
Yeah.
And we both, we were a few months behind you, recognized that like, oh, our cycles just like aren't there.
Yeah.
So I started carnivore early 2019, and I came from a very plant-based keto diet approach. So I was eating a lot of like dark cruciferous vegetables and nuts and seeds. And I was still eating high protein, but just getting it in from like eggs, egg whites. We prided ourselves by being like vegans. So VEGGAN. And so going to a carnivore, like, of course you're going to feel like great, right? Like, wow, your body's finally getting bioavailable nutrients. You're removing all these anti-nutrients from all these dark green veggies. So I felt really good for all of 2019.
And you guys had autoimmune issues too. I mean, that's one thing I think that people forget, is that your blood markers were indicative of major autoimmune issues, right?
Yeah, so it's a ANA blood marker. Sarah's were a lot higher than mine, and her rheumatologist, of course, just gave the standard, like, you're just going to get lupus one day. You just have to wait to see when that happens. Here's some medication. And so we said, we're not going to do that. We're going to take our diet in our own hands. So that's what led us to keto, fasting, and then eventually carnivore. My blood markers were a little bit lower than hers, but it still indicated ANA, and so excessive inflammation. And so with carnivore, my ANA blood markers went down to 0. So I completely reversed the autoimmune. And so like, I think some people think that we're like anti-carnivore. I think that there are so many powerful things about carnivore, right? Like, you get bioavailable protein. A lot of people struggle with getting protein intake. You remove anything that's like inflammatory to your gut, and people don't realize, if your gut is messed up, like, your health is going to be messed up. And so like there's so many powerful things about it. So I reversed my ANA. We significant reduction in inflammation. We felt amazing. And one thing that just wasn't right, that we just continued to brush under the rug, was we didn't have our period.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that not talking about it was a disservice to my community. And I still kind of regret holding that inside for a long time, because we would get a ton of messages from women being like, hey, I lost my cycle. What can I do? And like, we didn't know how to answer those questions because we didn't have our cycles, and it started to feel really weird. And it was uncomfortable. I'm sure you get those messages too. And I don't think that many people in the community talk about, like, there's certainly a right and wrong way to approach carnivore. And if like, your hormones need to be on top of that priority list. And if you don't have those, you need to make a change. And so we actually started talking to Dr. Fit and Fabulous, Dr. Jamie Seaman, and Dr. Paul Saladino about our hormones. And they suggested trying a high-fat carnivore diet. And so end of August 2019, I was eating like 220, 240, 250 grams of fat a day. And so I did that for a few months. My blood work didn't change. My hormones didn't change after that, which was like really surprising to me. Mm-hmm. So I said, I kind of got this mindset of like, I'm broken. Oh, well, I'm going to go back to moderate fat. So I was eating like 180 to 190 grams of fat and like 150 grams of protein, maybe a little bit higher. I was somewhere around 2,400 calories, some composition of like high fat, but still high protein. And so I just went back to that for a few months. And then honestly, Sarah is the one that finally was like, we have to address our hormones. Like we can't keep doing this. And so we decided, because the high fat approach didn't work for us, we're going to add in carbs. And I would like to make a disclaimer that we were still eating high calorie, like we were still gaining weight on carnivore. We were like bulking, lifting, trying to gain muscle. And so like we were still gaining weight. We weren't under eating. But we were still doing fasting every day, and we were still doing a lot of exercise. And so that's a disclaimer. Potentially, if I were to have really cut off my exercise and still continued with high fat, I don't know. But
and also the other thing that I had to do with high fat was I had to lower that protein way down.
Yeah.
So my protein is,
I didn't try.
Yeah, my protein's super low. I eat within 30 minutes of waking. You know, that's how I've done the high fat carnivore, and 200 grams of fat minimum and zero fasting. But that's just one approach, you know. So to say, let's just do something else, nothing wrong with that at all, you know.
Yeah, but like your example is a great example for someone, for example, who like maybe their gut isn't like tolerating vegetables. I think that me going a full year of carnivore really healed my gut. And so then I was able to finally add in this other stuff. If I were to have maybe tried this like at the start of carnivore, adding in carbs, I don't think my gut would have been that strong. And because I was on like plant-based keto where I just constant anti-nutrients, inflammation, and so much stuff in my gut, and like leaky gut, constipation, so much. So
Those nuts will kill you. I mean, my joints used to get so inflamed whenever I ate nuts, which I was doing before carnivore. I would eat nuts all the time, and I loved them, but they were so toxic.
I guess that's like a huge difference between keto and carnivore. But I think some people just assume like, hey, if I stay in ketosis by eating these nuts, like I'm okay. And I think that that's a similarity between our channels, where following diet dogma rules does not mean you're healthy. Like, I practice time restricted feeding today. I only ate for 4 hours. Yes, healthy. No, like that's actually says nothing about your health. And even like the ketones. So if you like take a Keto Mojo blood test and your ketones show 0.5, okay, cool. Like, but what does that say about your hormones? What does that say about like other metrics? I think I've loved following your blood work. I think that like blood work is a completely underrated tool. I think people should be using it a lot more. I know that a lot of blood work are just like specific points in time, and so those can fluctuate, but like, why not leverage those tools? I think that they're a lot more powerful. And I think people should use those to evaluate their own health.
I think so too. And it's like when I got my blood work back, this was like before I had decided to switch over. I had low T3, you know, my GFR was super low. My progesterone was low. I was just like, well, I thought carnivore was supposed to be this like amazing cure-all diet. And like, this is why, another reason why I love this dialogue and keeping, you know, our friendship, because it's like that danger of the echo chamber, and you get these lab tests back and you're like, wait a minute, you know, all these influencers out here are talking about how amazing this diet is and how it's going to cure everything, but my hormones are in the toilet and I don't feel good, and my cycle hasn't regulated. And I know, you know, it's like the stuff. And then like you were saying that you're getting all these comments and messages. I would love to talk about that, because ever since I started my YouTube channel, it's been, you know, and you get the people that are nasty that control your channel, and you're like, me, you shouldn't talk about this, that you shouldn't talk about adding in carbs, or you shouldn't talk about that. And I'm like, I think I should, because of the thousands of people that are having problems. Like you get to a point where you literally cannot block it out anymore, you know?
It's interesting, because the fasting and carnivore community seem to be like clumped together. And so you hear a lot of these bigger influencers talk about the positives and the health benefits. So people assume, if I fast, if I do carnivore, if I eliminate carbs, I will see all of these benefits. But something that I like to tell my audience and like people who message us, and this is kind of something that the Ray Peat community kind of discusses, is 2020 is stressful. Like humans are experiencing more stress in 2020, significantly more than what our ancestors experienced, like loads. And so while fasting back then may have been like a really like useful tool, we have a lot of stress in our body, and adding fasting, adding exercising, adding caloric restriction, those are huge stressors on top of the EMF waves going through our bodies, all of the mental stress about just life and like whatever's happening in 2020, whatever 2020 is. I think that gets missed. So sometimes like you can't, we should emulate ancestral principles, but I don't think that we can directly just use them on humans right now because of different stressors that we're having. And so that's why I think everyone just needs, like, everyone has different stress loads, right? And there's like this interesting theory out there that even your parents' stress loads has an influence on like how much stress you have. And so every individual needs to find their like stress balance. And I think that's where the problems come into play with the females. Adding in the fasting and the zero carbs, see that can be another stress, but I think that your approach has emulated that there is another option. But I think people need to be very like tune into your approach, like zero fasting, a lot of fat, lower protein, because higher protein,
you won't be in ketosis.
Exactly.
If you're in that middle place, if you're not glucose, you know, you're not ketosis, you're in cortisol. You're freaking cortisol.
That's where I think I was the entire time on carnivore, looking back, because I really wanted it to work. Right. So any like sort of negative thing that was happening, I kind of just brushed it aside, and I regret doing that.
Adaptation, or it's detox, kind of like the vegans do.
Exactly. And you told yourself that like, oh, my blood ketone marker shows 0.3. And so I'm just fat adapted. Right.
Right.
Is that actually the case? I don't think we know enough. I don't know. And so you being in that, like you said, like that middle ground where you're relying on gluconeogenesis every day of your life, is that a huge stress on top of fasting, relationships, exercise, like everything else? So I think that's something people need to consider.
I'm trying to get Chris Masterjohn on my channel and talk with him about this, because he's put out a lot of videos about how if you're eating over X amount of carbs and it's like the same thing happens with people on keto with eating too many carbs. Like I watched this video of his the other day where he's like, if you're eating 100 grams of carbs, that's not necessarily enough to get you into glucose metabolism, but you're still not going to be in ketosis. And he was talking about how people are having problems waking up all night because their cortisol is so high. And I was like, this is what's happening with people on carnivore. This is what happened to me on carnivore. So I was waking up all night and it was just a complete bleep show.
That is a great point. I think a lot of women have like kind of messaged us asking about like warning signs or symptoms, and waking up a lot in the middle of the night to pee, but like you have to think, like, did you really pee that much? Like, was your bladder actually
we should be making antidiuretic hormone. You know, we have a hormone in our body that is supposed to keep us from waking up to pee at night. So if you are, it's cortisol, adrenaline that's waking you up all night. And
that's a great sign that there's hormonal imbalances.
And I love the caveman thing. I mean, I've been trying to say this on my page too. It's like, we're not cavemen. And if our ancestors literally saw us today, like intentionally fasting and going and running on a treadmill at 6 o'clock in the morning with no fuel, they would laugh their asses off. They would be like, are you kidding me right now? Like, why would you do that when you have food readily available and then you go jump on a machine for an hour to do your fasted cardio? Like, they would probably just look at us and be like, you're idiots, you know?
Well, okay. So I'm sure many women can relate to like my story. So I don't know enough about your personality, but I am like type A personality. If anyone's taken the Enneagram test, I'm type 3. What are you? Okay. I'm type 3. So I am like perfectionist. Like I chase adrenaline. Like I thrive on that. And so at a certain point, I almost like enjoyed fasted exercise and like feeling stressed and like, that is
a 6.5 day water fast. I felt like Superwoman. I mean, Superwoman. And then the next 3 months, I felt like complete crap, complete crap for 3 months after that.
You brought up a great point. There is a difference between like having energy and feeling good versus being on an adrenaline high.
Yes.
And I didn't know the difference. Like I feel completely different now than I did a year ago. It's like a different level of energy. Sarah and I like to describe it as like, you know how in the past they wore like corsets?
Yeah.
Like super tight
yeah.
And you're like this, I feel like someone has like untied that. And again, I have no fasted exercise, none, no fasting, added in carbs, and like significantly reduced my training. I still do like some body weight exercises a few times a week, but I mean, I was strength training 6 days a week. Like, like you said, our ancestors would just be like, "What are you doing? Are you actually?"
Yeah. What is the point of this?
It's a tough, like 2020 is just like tough to battle to begin with, and then we add all these other things, and then you add on like all these different influencer opinions, and so like I can totally relate and imagine how lost people feel. Like,
yes,
what approach do I follow? And so therefore I think sometimes they follow the people with the biggest voice, right?
Yeah, who sound the smartest and are the most authoritative and have like this linear way of things, you know, like a doctor who sits up here and says fasting is safe for all women, it won't cause any trouble, and and it's like people flock to that. They love it because they want a definite answer. They want like, okay, this is what I do. And they do it and they start having problems, you know, and it's not good.
They want to be told. A lot of people just want to be told exactly what to do. And I think that's kind of one of the dangers of Instagram, social media. People just like directly replicate or copy what other people are doing. And that's why I'm sure you have followed our story just a little bit. We used to post our full days of eating on our story every single day. And we've stopped that now because no one else should be eating exactly like me. I have very specific goals. Like I'm trying to gain weight to signal to my body that it's safe to ovulate. Like, so Sarah's gotten her period back, just for the audience. Sarah has gotten her period back. It was after 4 months of stopping exercise, gaining weight, adding in carbs. I have had amenorrhea for 10 years. So I think that it is going to take a lot longer. I'm also under a lot of stress right now from trying to wrap up my PhD. And so I think it will maybe come after that. But something that I just want to like tell younger females is like being thin, chasing these unrealistic goals, fasting, exercise, and like putting a lot of stress on your body. It's not worth it. I am an example of someone that has to take like 10 steps backwards in order to take another step forward. Like I have now put on like 20-ish pounds. I'm at like the heaviest weight that I have personally ever been, and it has certainly been uncomfortable, but like I would have never had to get to this point if I would have been more in tune with my body and reduce the amount of stress on my body. And it's just so unfortunate that so much of social media and society makes women chase this like unrealistic, infertile female image, you know?
It is. That's exactly what it is. And it's like, no, it's so unhealthy. And I was, you know, I'm a lot older than you. I mean, I'm 41. You're what, 28?
I'm turning 28. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, 12. If anyone's confused, I understand. I get it.
I mean, so I feel lucky that all of this stuff wasn't as readily available when I was your age, because, you know, I would just kind of eat what I wanted when I was in my 20s. I got away with it. I had I was pregnant when I was 28. It's funny. That's when I had Alexis. But if this kind of culture had been out there, you know, chasing this thin ideal through Instagram and through YouTube and all this stuff, I think it probably would have affected me a bit differently, you know, because that's how I got into carnivore in the first place and learned about all this stuff was through Instagram and through YouTube. It was like, oh, here's this influencer and that influencer.
Yeah.
We just had like, you know, Cosmo and Glamour magazine when I was a young child. Yeah. We grew up in different eras, you know. I feel like the generation below me is a lot more stressed out. You
Mhm.
know, my generation is the last generation that grew up. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have Instagram. And I feel like that was to our advantage in a lot of ways, you know, because I didn't start seeing women have a lot of problems with fertility and a lot of problems with amenorrhea probably until like the last 10 years. That's
Yeah.
when I feel like that's when people really, I started really seeing a lot more of it, you know? And yeah, it's interesting. I think the plant-based diet also has something to do with that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like, so my generation is definitely like at a level of being messed up, but like the next generation,
Oh yeah.
like they're going to grow up in 5G. They're going to grow up with these like vegetable oil based baby formulas. It's just like a recipe for it's really sad. And
Yeah.
my generation seemed to like have this attitude of like, if you don't get your period, like that's cool. Like it's okay. Like I have been told by over 5 doctors that like, it's okay. Just go on birth control. And when you want to have a kid, we'll be able to make it happen. Like, don't worry about it. And it's like, no, if you want to live your best, like if your hormones aren't functioning properly,
Yeah.
like you are living a suboptimal life, no other bodily process are going to be operating like optimally. And when I have a kid, whatever year that is, like I'm gonna celebrate that girl's period. Like we're gonna have a party every month that happens and that comes. Like my generation, it just seemed like when girls got their period, it was like this weird, I don't know. It's sad. It's sad that like it's demonized and like looked down upon. But like similar to like the amenorrhea, it just also seems like on the flip side, there's so many hormonal issues like PMS and all those other symptoms that aren't natural either. And so there's just these two extremes that's just like, do you really think the human body was meant to have these two extremes? No, that wouldn't have stayed with us. Like, wouldn't have continued to bleed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrifying. And, you know, I can probably name right off the top of my head 5 different friends of mine that, you know, they're a little younger than me. They're in their 30s, but they have been trying to have kids for years.
Yeah.
One family, I know they ended up just adopting finally because they had so many miscarriages, you know, and they just could, it's tragic right now what's going on with our hormones. And, you know, I feel like what we have to do is promote healthy ways of living your life. It's a lifestyle. It's not just what goes on your plate. I think that is very important. It's foundational, but just reducing your stress all over your entire life. You know, we don't talk about that enough either, you know?
Yeah, I was like for a year, I was providing myself with the most bioavailable nutrients. Like you knew, but for your followers, I was the nose to tail side. So we would have 2 different organs,
All
try
the
to have
organs.
every day, try to have minimum 2, and cycling through all these different organs. And so like, even though I was providing myself with all these nutrients, I was just always behind in my stress load. And so like in modern 2020, you're born behind in your stress load. So you have to do whatever you can to reduce that. And society kind of, it's maybe my generation, I'm curious if you think on your generation, like there's this kind of shift in mindset that like female empowerment, like females should try to accomplish everything. Maybe it's just like my type 3 group, but like there's almost this like honoring of like females just really accomplishing a lot. And like I agree, like independent woman, strong independent woman, but we should also be honoring our body, right? And like celebrating it and making sure it's functioning properly. And like those should go along with each other rather than just succeeding and putting other things on the low side. And I have been that way for so long. And now I'm like reaping the consequences and have to work backwards in order to finally get back up to having a period.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just all screwed up. Like the generation that I'm in, definitely the emphasis on appearance is huge, you know, I can't tell you how many women have reached out to me and like, I want to lose weight. I want abs. I want this. And it's like the second you start chasing abs, you can pretty much kiss your hormones goodbye.
Yeah.
Like we're not really supposed to have these like ripped washboard stomachs. Like the only time I've ever had abs in my life, I had 0 period. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, we have to take that emphasis off of the appearance and the looks, you know, you may have bigger thighs, you may have big boobs and a butt, like that's okay. It's
Yeah, yeah,
okay. You know,
yeah,
you can be healthy and not have visible abs. And so I think the message I'm trying to put out to people is, you know, health. What
yeah,
are you ovulating? And there's ways to test for that. Like, is that something that's happening for you every month? Are you ovulating? How's your sleep?
yeah,
How's your energy? How are you feeling? Rather than focusing so hard on physical appearance, you
yeah,
know? And if
yeah,
you can do that with a carnivore diet, awesome. If you have to do that, you know, eating some carbs, awesome. Like there's not just like one way to
yeah,
achieve health, you know?
yeah. And I also, I think a lot of people just consider that there's a lot of people in this space consider that there's like three ways of eating:
Yeah.
standard American diet, keto, and carnivore.
Yeah.
And if you aren't keto and carnivore, you have to go back to standard American diet. And
Right.
we get clumped into that. And I'm like, have you,
No.
have you seen what we eat? Like, we are eating like fruit, honey, and maybe some starches like potatoes every once in a while, and then animal nutrients. It's like so different. There's no processed food, so there's other options, right? Like you can complement, you can still get the benefits. Personally, I think if you can still reap the benefits of carnivore diet by being animal based and adding in some carbs from time to time, just recognizing and remembering and realizing that that's not going to be the bulk of your nutrients, right? Because
Right.
the soil is depleted in nutrients, and so therefore there's going to be less in the fruit, less in you. But adding those as like a potentially other energy source, like we like to say, we're carb fueled but animal based for our nutrients. So we get all of our nutrients in from animal stuff and being like getting our energy in from carbs. We're not skimping on fat though. That's
So important.
that's the biggest comments that we get on our YouTube videos. Like, I can see the side effects of low fat. Like, I am not eating low fat. Yeah. So
Yeah.
people realizing that there are other options, and like you said, experimenting to find like your health by using these other metrics rather than just assuming that things are okay, or like accepting some like suboptimal way of eating. I think that's a big message that we get. Like, hey, like I've just been dealing with this symptom for a while, but I know that I'm doing good with fasting and carnivore. Like, what are your thoughts there? And there's too much like replication of what bigger people are doing.
I agree with that completely. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't do what I eat in a day videos, but I've started putting some of that out there because people are like, well, if I did want to do high fat carnivore, like, what does that even look like?
Yeah.
And I'm like, let me just show you, because it probably really looks nothing like what you think it looks like. Like before this conversation, I posted one of my meals and people were like, oh my God, that's like no food. Oh my God. Like people were literally freaking out about this meal I posted. I'm like, well, y'all want to know what I'm eating?
Yeah.
I'm not sitting there eating 3 ribeyes. I mean, there's a good amount of fat on my plate, and this is actually very calorically dense, but when you're eating this way, you're not going to have a big plate full of food. You're hungry. It's different, you know? So, and that's my other reason I haven't put a lot of those out, is I don't want people going out and copying, doing exactly what I'm doing. Cause it's like, I'm a 41-year-old female, you know, I'm somewhat active. I lift weights, you know, I have a stressful life, and it's not just the food. It's like your whole daily routine also, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Context is so key, and context gets lost so much. And that's why it's so hard to be in our position, because we want to help as many people as we can. But like, I am eating near 3,000 calories right now. And like, I wouldn't advise really anyone to ever do that, right? Like, I don't think that eating in a caloric surplus for a long period of time is always the best idea. And so it's like, how do you genuinely share your message without someone trying to copy it? And I think that this is just a reminder to your listeners, like, you should never be directly copying. You should instead look for nutrition principles and nutrition ideas. Like, for example, like incorporating liver a few times a week, rather than like, okay, how many exact ounces of beef suet does Sarah have on her plate?
Exactly. Yeah, it drives me crazy, because I literally daily I get those messages. How many ounces of this and that and the other do you eat? And I'm like, I'm not going to type that out,
No.
first of all. And second of all, it's not going to matter because you're different than me. We're not the same person. And that's such a difficult thing about being in a nutrition space, period. And like, where I consider what I'm doing blogging, you know, I'm just sharing my experience. I'm not out here trying to like sell anything. I'm just, just putting it out there. You know, if it helps someone, cool. If not, that's fine too. But it's a very tricky place to be in.
Yeah. I think that we're very similar in that, where it's like, yo, I'm just sharing my story. Like,
Yeah.
Don't at me. I'm not selling like a supplement or anything. Like I'm literally selling zero.
Yeah.
Just hoping that like our stories can potentially like help someone or inspire someone. That's like our only purpose. And I think people think that like we all make like big bucks doing this. And I'm like,
no.
No.
No. I mean, it's minimal. Like if you have a monetized YouTube channel, it's not going to pay your bills. It's really not. But yeah, people do assume because you have a lot. And I kind of thought that too, when I'd see people on Instagram with like, you know, a bunch of followers, that they were just making hand over fist. And then it's like, I got a decent amount of followers. I'm like, oh, you don't get a paycheck for.
No, exactly. So that's why I've had to really take a step back recently and reflect on like on my content and like what we're actually sharing. I want to be efficient with it, so that way people kind of remove some of the dogmatic things and just really try to share more like bigger picture principles. Dogma is so hard.
It is so hard. And people, you know, it's all fear-based. That's the thing, that in 2020, it's like a big fear explosion, you know? So we've had it, I feel like extra, you know, anytime you challenge something, challenge a specific narrative, that scares people because they love to attach themselves to sets of ideas and groups of people based on those ideas. And if you challenge that and say, let's poke some holes in that, that's perhaps not going to work for everybody, people take it personally. And they will attack you. And it's pretty mind-blowing, you know?
No, it really is. And I think it's just that it goes back to like, people like to be told what to do. And so then when these other ideas come in, it just like confuses people. And I totally get that idea. It's incredibly confusing. And for people that are on our channel, like we've been interviewing people who believe that everyone should be consuming carbs. And then we have been interviewing people who believe everyone should be consuming fats. So I don't know if you've listened to our Morley Robbins.
Yeah, I actually have an interview. I interviewed him, but I haven't put it out yet.
Awesome. I love Morley. Oh, he's so great.
He is great.
So I know that people are confused. Like, wait, they interviewed someone that thinks people should be eating carbs, someone should be eating fat, but like, I think there's more to it. Like, I think there's a deeper level of like micronutrients, minerals, balance, like really deeper level things that a lot of people don't talk about. And so we actually got like a mineral test and a hair tissue mineral analysis that Morley is going to be analyzing. So I think that that's another useful test that people can get, is like analyzing your mineral content, because if this is something that Morley talks about, if your copper levels aren't right, your fat metabolism is going to be messed up. And on the flip side, if you're eating carbs and your iron levels are messed up, your carb metabolism is not going to be right. And because the copper and iron minerals are like balanced. And so I think like that's a further discussion of like actual health metrics. So getting like your mineral tests evaluated and similar to like the hormones, like if those baseline things just aren't right, then higher level things such as consuming carbs and fats isn't going to work right.
Right. Yeah, he's doing a hair for me and my daughter too. So I haven't gotten that back yet. I'm interested to see what he says, but yeah, I mean, this is what I love, is just you continue to bring in new ideas and that's what I want to do on my channel. And I'm telling people, I'm still doing carnivore, because people are actually confused right now whether or not I'm still doing carnivore, because I've been challenging a lot of carnivore stuff. Like my next video is going to be like, here's 5 reasons why you should quit carnivore. And that's going to piss some people off, but I gotta throw it out there. Hey, if your health's going to the toilet and you've tried everything, perhaps you need to
Yeah.
do something else. You know, I feel blessed that I haven't had to.
Yeah.
But if that starts to happen for me, I'm not going to be a dumbass
Yeah.
and keep doing something that doesn't work, you know? So
Yeah.
you have to just keep an open mind. And, I love to just have conversations like this, and, you know, it's hilarious to me, and I'm almost kind of sad that I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, oh, what do you think about the Strong Sisters? Isn't what they're doing so stupid? And aren't they acting like vegans? And I'm like, actually, they're my friends, and I have their phone number, and we text,
Yeah.
and I fully support whatever it is that they have decided to do with their nutrition, with what they're eating, because
Exactly.
what someone else eats does not make me love or hate them. I'm sorry.
People are trying to push a wedge in between us. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's like, are you actually trying to create bigger divides? Like, what is your actual purpose? So apparently people have messaged like health coach Kate about our carb stuff too. And it's like, why do you want other people's, like, what are you looking for to get
Right.
someone else's opinion? Like, this is my body. I am a young female that's fixing years of messed up hormones. Like, I'm going to do what I want with my body because
Right.
it's messed up and it needs to heal. And so,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. And, you know, I mean, I'll even go so far as to say I have friends who are vegans, and they're still really good friends of mine.
Yeah.
We're still really close, and we're still good
Yeah.
friends. Do I think that the way that they eat would work for me? Hell no. I don't want to do that. But does that mean I cannot respect them as a human being?
Exactly.
Absolutely not. Like, it's time to wake up and realize, like, we're still human. We can still be friends and like eat different. I can't believe I'm even saying this. It sounds, when you say it, it sounds so dumb. It's just like,
I totally agree. It's like you take a step back and it's like, wait, why are we arguing about this? Like, let's take 3 steps back and look at like the US dietary guidelines or like the plant-based agenda, then we can laugh about that stuff. Like, what is this silliness?
Right. Yeah. I agree. Well, I know you have to start getting ready for your PhD stuff you've got going on today, but tell everyone kind of like what's coming next for you guys, what you guys are working on. I know there's some farm stuff in the works.
Yeah. So I think people may be a little saddened. Our channels are really going to kind of take a pivot to kind of go really deep into regenerative agriculture. I have decided, you know, I did a lot of self-reflection during quarantine, and I've decided that my field in mechanical engineering, what I'm getting my degree in, is not something that I want to pursue professionally. So 5 years of graduate school, poof. So Sarah and I are going to start a regenerative farm and chase our passions with that. And we will still share about like whatever nutrition thing we're doing, but this is going to be like our everyday life, regenerative agriculture, starting a farm from scratch with 0 experience. And so our YouTube and our Instagram is strong.sistas. And so we'll be documenting every step of the way. It should be quite entertaining because, again, 0 experience. So people can tag along there. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Another similarity between us and Sarah is like regenerative agriculture is cool as heck and powerful, and it's what our country needs to repair the soil. We're both huge proponents of white oak pastures. Yeah. We're actually going there in like 25 days. So the day after my defense, we're leaving to go. We're doing a cookbook with Dr. Paul Saladino. I think people are going to be it's going to be carnivore animal based, but there are going to be a lot of carbs. Not a lot. There are going to be carbs in it. And that's to just make it more approachable for a wider audience. I don't think people realize how small the carnivore community is sometimes. Yes. And so if we can impact a larger audience, if there's like some fruit and like potatoes in the recipes, I think that that's more powerful rather than remaining dogmatic. So we hope that this cookbook will be able to reach a wider audience, and it should be out the end of this year or early next year. So we're going to White Oak to like take photos for it. So yeah, so look for the cookbook with Dr. Paul Saladino. I'm sure he'll have it on his channel, and then Instagram and YouTube, Strong Sistas.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I link all that below.
Okay.
Cool. Well, yeah, this has been awesome. And we're definitely going to have to do another, like more of these. And
yeah, for sure.
Especially when Sarah can come back and talk a little bit too. But
yeah, if your audience has any questions for us, like hit them in the comments, and we can do another video kind of addressing those.
Hell yeah, I would love
Yeah.
that. Well,
Yeah.
this has been so awesome and just such a great conversation. So I hope a lot of people, can listen and hopefully take something from it.
Yeah.
If the simplest thing they take from it is like, don't live your life in an echo chamber, then that's my biggest message, that I hope people hear.
That's great. I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again.
All right. Thanks,
And
Sarah.
we'll see you again soon.